Hello. I tend to think of history like a mirror. When we look into the mirror, we see ourselves. We see the positives and the negatives of who we are. It feels very good to focus on our achievements, the heroes, and the proud moments. But if we only look at those, we will miss the chance to learn and grow. When we face the uncomfortable parts of our past, the barriers, the injustices, and the mistakes, we begin to understand who we are and who we can become. History isn't just about celebration. It is about reflection, it's about growth, and to see ourselves and our ancestors honestly. My name is Taylor Schmalz. I am the technically assistant director, but acting director of Historic St. George's Museum and Archives. I have my master's degree in applied history with a concentration in museum studies, and I'm currently working on a PhD in public history. In total, I have been studying history for just about a decade. In this time, I have primarily studied women's history, and since I started at Historic St. George's, I started studying Methodist history. Through my pursuit of history, I have been passionate about the role of archives and museums being accessible to the public because they are vital for their ability to protect, to capture, and to serve as the foundation of our public and our collective memory. They preserve the voices, the experiences, and the decisions that have shaped who we are today. Without archives, we lose the evidence that connects us to our past. The letters, the journals, the records, the photographs, and the material culture that tells the stories of everyday people alongside those great leaders. History allows us to interpret those stories and to understand not only what happened, but why it happened, why it mattered, and how we can learn from it. Archives give us the raw materials to build empathy, accountability, and truth. We can use these archives in the history to see who we would have been and inspire us to see where we can go. Archives remind us that understanding the past is necessary to create a more thoughtful and inclusive future. Moreover, museums bring history to life by transforming archival materials and the stories into almost tangible experiences. They allow visitors to connect to history, and I hope to inspire every visitor that comes through St. George's. As you may know, we are currently going through a mass museum remodel, and I wanted to discuss one of my new exhibits today. One of my new exhibits is called Crafting Philadelphia, and in this exhibit, we see how average people shape society with their views. One feature I have revolves around the Dorcas, which I have as Acts 9:36 through 42, if you'd like to take a second to read those. One feature we have surrounds the Dorcas Society, and in the Bible, the story of Dorcas and her influence on individuals in the community helps shape how we see biblical womanhood and how we can act going into the future. Dorcas is an incredibly powerful figure. She created clothing for widows and orphans, which had a long-lasting impact on her community. Through her devotion and her faith, Peter was able to revive her, and we can see the impact that she had on the people of Joppa in their mourning and the journey to bring her back. While her story may be short, she had a long-lasting impact on history and the communities all around the world. Her story inspires many people, to the point that the women of Historic St. George's created the Dorcas Society in the early 19th century. The society aimed to create clothing for the poor and distribute funds for the struggling individuals. Dorcas' story spawned women's societies and shaped how they operated. While this story is not unique to Methodism, the denomination is unique. Methodist history parallels American history. As Methodism grew, America grew. When America split due to abolition, the Methodists were just dividing over abolition as well. As America slowly grew back together, Methodism united. By exploring our Methodist heritage, we can see how average people and lay leaders uplift communities. By creating safe spaces and physically contributed to the development of American history while simultaneously looking at our flaws and shifts in ideology that changed both American and Methodist history. Methodism has generally been a progressive denomination in the sense that it gave women and minorities spaces to contribute and to lead individuals because of their faith. The message of personal holiness carried by circuit riders went across racial, social, and economic lines. We can see Methodists as leaders of the earliest Black benevolent societies, leaders of civil rights and political rights advocacy groups. One leader that comes to mind particularly is Harry Hooser. Harry Hooser transcended racial and educational boundaries in early American society. Hooser was documented by some of the founding fathers such as Benjamin Rush and some of the early Methodist leaders such as Thomas Coke for his ordinating skills. Both men said Hooser was one of the best ordinators of all time. Despite his illiteracy, he was able to memorize Bible verses and hymns, and these skills gave him the ability to attract crowds. Between his travels with Francis Asbury, they were able to reach wide audiences, and he received a national prestige as a religious figurehead in a time where social mobility was hard for people of color and anybody with a limited education. Hooser and Asbury were able to baptize more people in a day than what a traditional English pastor would in their entire ministry. Hooser himself founded Mother Zor, the first Methodist church for the people of color in Philadelphia, which is now the second longest running Methodist church in continuous service in the city today. We can see empowerment through early Methodism and the dedication they had for the movement. George Whitefield was simultaneously one of America's first celebrities because of the way he could attract crowds and keep attention, but he was also a target for hate from individuals who did not appreciate his ideas of personal holiness. One woman named Rebecca Grace found out about a plot to assassinate Whitefield and personally accompanied him on a horseback to thwart the attempt on his life, despite the harm that may come to her. Her bravery paid off because when the men intercepted Whitefield and Rebecca, they ended up letting both of them go because they found it rude to kill somebody in front of a woman. Despite Whitefield's troubling views on slavery, the impact it had on the state of Georgia, Whitefield was a key player in the Great Awakening, and because of his work and because of her bravery, he was able to continue his work spreading the Great Awakening through America. However, further advocacy can be seen from the Methodist Book Concern. While this initiative was created to distribute what they deemed as appropriate literature, it spread so much more. Spreading works such as the Discipline, Methodist hymns, and other works allowed writers, authors, and printers to do so much more than convert people to the Methodist cause. By including the Methodist stance on abolition in the Discipline and spreading the ideas of abstaining from alcohol or tobacco, it helped spread what would become the abolition and temperance movement. Moreover, the circuit riders went into rural areas before many other denominations. This facilitated a way to disseminate change to areas who did not receive an easy access to this information. Additionally, the outsourcing of printing and binding materials during the Book Concern's beginnings had a large impact on the economy. Many printers were immigrants, and many binders were typically women. This gave individuals who were often discriminated against a way to influence the economy and helped boost local and American economy until the 1820s. However, these missions from lay leaders did not just stop at home missions. We can see this work follow all the way around the world. One way we can think of this is with Anna Redinger, who you may have heard of. Anna Redinger was a foreign missionary, and she spent 30 years in China. Anna is important because she documented history for 30 years. In fact, she documented 3 wars. She took home material culture with her. She documented the famine that she saw in China. She documented about communism's rise, and she documented the orphans that she saw. She was active in battlefields. Actually, we have one of her bullets that she picked up from those fields in our collection. And while she was a little bit of a kleptomaniac because she took so much home with her, like a outfit that she belonged to an orphan in China, this material culture helps document and show how cultures begin to intertwine. She documented the story of how she took an orphan in from China to help him escape from the famine. Some of the things she brought home, such as her Chinese coin sword, helped show the intertwinings of Chinese culture with Western culture, and how she embraced some of their faith traditions to help ward away the spirits with the coin sword. We can also see interdenominational change, such as the Door of Hope dolls, an initiative that was created by 5 different denominations to help save children from foot binding, from child marriage, and any other harms that they faced. In exchange, they taught them how to make these dolls, and specifically the clothing for these dolls, which they could then take with them after they left a compound, giving them a way to make a living for themselves. Anna's leadership impacted and changed people's lives as we know it today. To conclude, I see history as a mirror. It reveals not only who we are, but who we are called to become. When we gaze into that mirror, figures like the Dorcas reflect back at us. They remind us that faith and action can transform entire communities. Her passion and devotion to service laid the groundwork for generations of women and lay leaders who followed her example. Those who, without title or position, built ministries, clothed the poor, and uplifted the forgotten. In every era of Methodism, it was lay people, ordinary individuals with extraordinary faith who carried the message of grace, justice, and renewal. Like Dorcas, the stories of Harry Hooser, Rebecca Grace, and Anna Redinger, and so many others remind us that leadership is not just confined to pulpits or power, but found through the daily acts of change and service that shape the lives and change history. Methodism's story, much like Americans, is one of struggle and of perseverance, of confronting our failures and while striving towards holiness and equality. When we look at our history with ambition and integrity and honesty, acknowledging both its triumphs, the turmoil, and transgressions, we can do more than just study the past. We can continue the work and continue paving the way towards progress. What I have spent my whole life learning and studying can be summed up with one statement. History is not a story of heroes standing apart from us, but a story of people like us, people who choose to act, to believe, and to serve. When we study their lives, they remind us not only of our power, but to challenge the injustice that we see and to build a better future for our generations to come. May we, like those before us, continue to look into the mirror of history, this time, not only to admire our reflection, but to figure out how we can grow, how we can change, and how we can pave the path for a better future. Thank you.